I exposed my cousin's affair with my brother's wife at our family business anniversary party. Hey Reddit. I've always believed that family should come first, but what happens when the very people you trust the most betray you in the worst way possible? That's exactly what I found out in the most gut-wrenching way imaginable. My family runs a successful business, one that my grandfather started from the ground up. Over the decades, it became more than just a source of income, it was a legacy, something that bound us all together. So, when we hit a major anniversary, my father decided to throw a massive party to celebrate. Everyone was there. My parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and even employees who had been with us for decades. It was supposed to be a night of joy, of looking back at how far we had come. But little did I know, it would become the night that shattered our family forever. I had been suspecting something for months, but I kept brushing it off, telling myself I was overthinking. My cousin, Mark, had always been close to my brother's wife, Emma. Too close. At first, it seemed innocent, family get-togethers where they laughed a little too much, inside jokes that my brother, Jake, wasn't even in on, stolen glances that made my gut twist. But things started getting worse. Late-night messages, unexplained absences, and moments where they disappeared during family events only to return looking different. I wasn't the only one who noticed. My mother had even mentioned once that Mark and Emma seemed to have a strange energy between them, but she dismissed it as harmless. I wish I had done the same. Then came the moment that changed everything. One evening, I was at the office late, finishing up some reports. As I was heading out, I saw Mark's car in the parking lot. Nothing unusual, he worked there too. But then I noticed another car parked beside his. Emma's. My heart started pounding. I knew I shouldn't have, but something inside me told me to check. I went back inside as quietly as I could, making my way toward Mark's office. And that's when I heard them. Their voices were hushed, but I could hear enough. My hands clenched into fists as I realized what was happening. The betrayal. The audacity. I wanted to burst in, confront them right then and there, but something held me back. I needed proof. So, I pulled out my phone and started recording from outside the door. When I finally had enough, I left, my head spinning. That night, I barely slept. The rage, the hurt, the confusion, it was all too much. I kept replaying everything in my head, wondering how long it had been going on, how many times my brother had unknowingly sat across from the man who was sleeping with his wife. And then, an idea formed. The anniversary party. They had done this in our family business, betraying not just my brother but all of us. It only felt right that I exposed them there, in front of everyone. The night of the party arrived. The venue was decorated beautifully, laughter filled the air, and for a while, it almost felt like I could forget what I knew. Almost. I watched as Mark and Emma mingled, as if nothing had happened, as if they weren't the worst kind of people. My brother, oblivious, stood by Emma's side, smiling, completely unaware that the woman he loved had already replaced him in her heart. I could barely stomach it. And then, the moment came. My father went up on stage to make a speech, talking about how proud he was of the family and the legacy we had built. That was my cue. As soon as he finished, I took the microphone. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. I started by saying how grateful I was for the business, for the family, for everything we had accomplished. And then, I turned toward Mark and Emma. The room fell silent as I began. I spoke about loyalty. About trust. About how family should mean something. And then I dropped the bombshell. I revealed everything, how I had caught them, how I had proof, how they had betrayed not just my brother but all of us. Gasps filled the room, followed by stunned silence. My brother looked at me, then at Emma, then at Mark. He was frozen, like his brain was refusing to process what he had just heard. And then, I played the recording. The entire hall erupted. Emma turned pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Mark tried to step forward, but my uncle, his own father, shoved him back, his face red with fury. My mother started crying. My father looked like he had aged 10 years in a matter of seconds. And my brother just stood there, completely shattered. Emma tried to grab his arm, but he pulled away like her touch burned him. What happened next was chaos. Shouting. Accusations. Emma and Mark tried to defend themselves, but no one wanted to hear it. Mark's parents disowned him right there, saying he had disgraced the family. Emma ran out, humiliated, with Mark trailing after her, but the damage was already done. My brother didn't move for the longest time. When he finally did, he just walked out, leaving behind everything, his marriage, his trust, his entire world that had just crumbled around him. The night ended in disaster. People left in a daze, not knowing what to say. My father told me I had done the right thing, but my mother wasn't so sure. She kept saying that there could have been a better way. But was there? How else was I supposed to expose them? Let them continue their disgusting betrayal in silence? No. They got what they deserved. But now, the aftermath is setting in. My brother hasn't spoken to anyone since that night. My parents are devastated. The family business is suffering because Mark was a key part of it, and now everything is in disarray. And worst of all, there's a part of me that wonders, did I do the right thing? Did I destroy everything, or was it already broken? I don't regret exposing them. But now, I have to deal with the consequences. And something tells me this is only the beginning. Update. The days after the party were absolute chaos. My brother, Jake, completely shut down. He left the party without a word, and none of us heard from him for days. My parents tried calling him, visiting his place, but he wasn't answering the door or responding to messages. It was like he had disappeared into thin air. I started to worry. He had just discovered that his wife, the woman he trusted with his life, had been betraying him with our own cousin. That kind of pain isn't something you just get over. I thought maybe I should have spoken to him before exposing everything so publicly, but deep down, I knew there was no easy way to tell someone something like that. Meanwhile, the fallout within the family was even worse than I expected. My uncle, Mark's father, was beyond furious. He told Mark he was dead to him and that he would never forgive him for bringing shame to the family. Mark tried to apologize, but no one was willing to hear it. He had moved out of his parents' house the day after the party and was reportedly staying at some motel, avoiding everyone. He must have realized that no one wanted to be around him because he didn't even try to show up at the office. Speaking of the business, things were a mess. My father had trusted Mark with a lot of responsibilities, and with him gone, we were struggling to cover everything. Clients started asking questions, rumors were spreading, and the reputation of the business was suffering. My father tried to keep everything together, but I could see the stress wearing him down. My mother, on the other hand, was caught between anger and sadness. She was furious at Mark and Emma for their betrayal, but she also kept saying that maybe we should have handled it privately, that we had torn the family apart in front of everyone. But how else could it have been handled? Mark and Emma had disrespected our family, our home, and our business. They deserved to be exposed for what they did. As for Emma, she completely disappeared after the party. She hadn't gone back to my brother's house, and her social media accounts were deleted. A mutual friend told me she had been staying with one of her girlfriends, trying to figure out what to do next. She had tried reaching out to my brother multiple times, but he wasn't answering. I later found out that he had blocked her number entirely. Good. She didn't deserve even a second of his time after what she had done. After nearly a week of silence, Jake finally resurfaced. He showed up at my apartment looking like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't say much at first, just sat there, staring at the floor. Then, after what felt like forever, he finally spoke. He thanked me for telling him the truth but admitted that he didn't know what to do next. He had been blindsided. He never once suspected Emma of cheating, let alone with our cousin. He kept asking why, what he had done wrong, what was missing in his marriage that made her turn to Mark. I told him that none of this was his fault, that some people are just selfish and cruel. But I could see the pain in his eyes, the doubt eating away at him. No matter what I said, he was still questioning everything. Another update. Jake finally decided to meet with Emma, not because he wanted to fix things, but because he wanted closure. He told me he needed to hear her admit it, needed to see if she had even a shred of remorse. So, they met at a small cafe, and he told me everything afterward. Apparently, Emma was a mess, crying the entire time, begging for forgiveness, saying it was a mistake, that she never meant to hurt him. But then she dropped the worst excuse imaginable. She claimed she had been lonely. That Jake had been too focused on work, too wrapped up in the family business, and that Mark had just been there for her when she needed someone. Jake told me that hearing that was like a slap in the face. He had been working hard because he wanted to build a future for them. He had done everything for her, thinking they were in it together. And all the while, she had been sneaking around with our own cousin, betraying him in the worst way possible. When he told her he was filing for divorce, she completely broke down, saying she didn't want that they could work through it. But Jake wasn't having it. He told her she had destroyed any trust he had in her, that there was no coming back from this. And just like that, he walked out, leaving her sobbing in the cafe. As for Mark, things got even worse for him. He lost his job at the family business because my father refused to let him step foot in the building again. He had been calling my uncle, begging for another chance, but my uncle wasn't budging. Apparently, Mark tried to get a job elsewhere, but our industry is tight-knit, and word spreads fast. Nobody wanted to hire someone with that kind of scandal attached to their name. Last I heard, he was still holed up in a cheap motel, trying to figure out his next move. I had no sympathy for him. He had made his bed, and now he had to lie in it. My family, however, was still fractured. My mother kept trying to push for some kind of reconciliation, saying that despite everything, we were still family. My father, on the other hand, was done with Mark and wanted nothing to do with him. My brother was still struggling, but at least he had started going back to work, trying to rebuild his life. I knew it was going to take a long time before he fully recovered from this. Final update. It's been a few months now, and while things are still tense, we're slowly starting to heal. Jake finalized the divorce, and thankfully, there weren't any major legal battles since they didn't have kids. Emma tried reaching out a few more times, but Jake never responded. He finally seems to be moving forward, focusing on himself instead of dwelling on the betrayal. He even started going to therapy, which I think is helping him process everything. As for Mark, he left town. After months of being unable to find a stable job and facing rejection from the entire family, he packed up and moved to another state. No one really knows where he went, and honestly, no one cares. My uncle still refuses to even say his name, and my father never brings him up. He's as good as gone. The family business is finally stabilizing after the damage Mark left behind. It took a lot of work, but we managed to recover. My father even promoted Jake to a higher position, giving him more control over things, which I think is helping him regain a sense of purpose. The trust that was broken within our family is still healing, but at least we're not walking on eggshells anymore. Looking back, do I regret exposing everything the way I did? No. Mark and Emma didn't deserve to get away with what they did. They disrespected my brother, my family, and our business. They thought they could sneak around and never face consequences. They were wrong. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about making sure they couldn't continue their betrayal in silence. My brother deserved to know the truth, and I made sure he got it. In the end, we all learned a harsh lesson about trust, betrayal, and the importance of standing up for what's right. The scars from this will always be there, but at least now, we can finally move forward.